This is going to be part 2 in the series of tutorials for building our city or city spell app. In the previous part, we have reached step number 27, where we added a material to this big, huge plane that the whole city is going to be sitting on, and it's time to bring in the city. So, there's a poly-sized medieval desert city demo. Where is that? In the teacher's pack. Maybe I'll add that from. Here's the teacher's assets, and here's poly-sized medieval city, desert city. So from city teacher assets. From there, we're going to find the folder called Poly-Sized Medieval Desert City. Now, this was retrieved from the asset store. It's a whole city that someone put together very generously for free on the asset store, and we're going to be using it. And like many free assets, I mean, it has the prefabs, has like, a bunch of like buildings. I mean, look at the bottom here. It's got a bunch of, like basically like Lego pieces that the whole city is made of. It's going to take us years to build, the whole city from it. But luckily enough, they also have, if I go back, they also have a demo. And a demo has two scenes. Asset layout, which is basically like laying out all the assets. Let me save what I got. Laying down all the assets of the city. Like, unboxing it, basically like a Lego set, like all the different buildings and all the different assets and so on. But even a lot more helpful, it's got another scene called Demo 01 where they're arranged as a city. And we're going to use that. We're actually not even going to use all of it. We're going to use parts of it. Now, how do we bring this thing into our scene? Unfortunately, maybe in the future they will. You cannot just take, I need the whole city, because the core is just, the camera and the sky and so on. But what I need, if I turn this off, you can see that what I need is the whole city. I cannot just copy paste it. I wish I could. It doesn't work. I can try. Maybe in this version they did this. Copy. I can open my own scene. Maybe I'll be surprised. I haven't tried this in a while. But at least in the past, if I open my own scene and paste, oh, actually it did paste. That's great. Another way which has worked for me in the past has been, if I undo this, is to drag in the whole scene, poly-sized demo 1, to drag in. Now, yes, this means that I got a scene inside my scene. And once I do, take the whole city and move it over from the demo scene to my scene. And once I do, right-click on demo and remove the demo scene, only telling it not to save changes. Don't save. So that way I still have my demo intact. Great. I just brought in everything, the whole city. But like I said, we don't need the whole city. We don't need those mountains and the port and all that stuff. So either copy pasting or doing it the way I just showed you, which is also the way that it talks about in the instructions, to drag the game object whole city, move it, then right click, remove, and don't save. Then the whole city transform should be, let's see. Yep. It pretty much is. I'm just checking. Negative 51.3, 128, and everything else is reset. Now look at what it does here. We're going to unfold the whole city, and we're just going to delete the parts we don't want. And you might ask, oh, what if we want them later? If we want them later, they're still in the demo scene. So no danger. Here's the port. Right click, delete. Here is the terrain, right-click, delete. And we're left with only the city, which is standing now on our plane. Good. The next step is something like this. We deleted port, we deleted terrain. We're going to select the whole city. We're going to fold it. Then, here's the idea. It looks great. It's awesome. It's a very, very complex city with buildings and, fountains and churches and stuff like that. But none of these objects have a collider, which means if I move through the city, I'll be able to move through walls, which kind of defeats the purpose of the game of looking for a treasure, having to go around things. So if I want to add a collider to it, the most natural kind of collider that I want to add to every object here is its own mesh collider. In other words, if it's a building, add a collider that looks like the building. The only problem is that this city, these are just the blocks of the city. Look at, for instance, one block is made out of like a ton of buildings. If I select this building, yeah, I know I can add to this building a mesh collider, but I'll have to do this, it'll take me years to do all of this. So here's the trick to add a mesh collider to all of them. I'm going to fold the city and look at the instructions. Fold the whole city, then holding Alt if you're on Windows or Option if you're on Mac, unfold it again. That makes it unfold completely. Look at this. If I'm going to hold, I'm on Mac, so I'm going to hold Option and unfold, see how it unfolded to its molecular level. And at this point, what I'm going to do is select from the very first object, which is, look at what it says, from the very first object, which is city border, to the very last object, which is dead tree F. Now, all the objects in the city are selected. So city border, scroll down, hold shift, like we always do to select from start to finish, and click, and all of them are selected. I see that one of them is missing. It's, no big deal. All the objects are selected. If all the objects are selected, I can add a mesh collider to all of them. And the beautiful thing is that each one of them will choose its own mesh for its mesh collider. In the inspector, add component, mesh collider, default settings, not convex, then fold whole city. So it's all selected. I'm going to make sure that they're really all selected. Add component, mesh collider, not convex, and that's it. And save. And just to demonstrate, for instance, this Castlegate has a mesh collider that uses Castlegate as its mesh. If I get close to it, it's this. Let's look at it from here. I don't need to be convex because most of them are kind of square. Convex is for like round stuff. The next step is I'm saying, hey, I got this whole city here, and I'd like to be able to walk through it even before I build it too. I like to explore it. I'd like to be able to, and also check the colliders. So I'm going to fold whole city, and then in the teacher's assets, I can find a package which we used before called standard assets. It's got a bunch of like little effects and stuff, but it also has a single character, basically the equivalent of the OVR player controller, but for PC screens, for desktop screens. And it's inside the folder called characters, inside first person character, inside prefabs, and here it is, FPS controller, and I'm going to drag it in. Now, I cannot have both, so I'm going to, just temporarily, OVR player controller, I'm going to disable temporarily. You can see that this has its own camera, but I'm like below the floor, so the FPS controller, here it is. It tells you where to find it, FPS controller, drag it to the hierarchy, not as a child of anything, and look at what settings I'm giving it. I'm pretty much placing it where the camera would be. So 0 1.8, -3. So I'm resetting it. 0, a height of 1.8, and a z of -3. So right now I'm pretty much looking at the same view. They're almost basically at the same spot. So the FPS controller is here and the OVR camera is very close to it. So now I can use this to walk through the city even while I'm on a desktop, even before I build. The one thing I will need to do, I gave it the transform that I needed to. I need to disable the OVR player controller, which I just did, and go to a menu called Mobile Input and disable it. And click OK if there's a dialog. So, Mobile Input, disable. I'm going to click OK, so it knows that I'm ignoring mobile input and paying attention to desktop keyboard. When I play, I should be able to use my arrows. Okay, it takes it a second to go into play. Here it is. I'm using my mouse to look around, and I'm using my arrows or my keys, my WASD, to move around the city. And also see that my colliders are working. I cannot go through walls. It has its own, step sounds. Doesn't bother me. And I can look through. This also means that if we ever needs to, it will be rather easy. Not that we're planning on doing that, but it would be rather easy to turn this game into a desktop game. Even though I don't think I'm going to do that because it's so much more fun in. If I hold Shift, I'm running. Spacebar, I'm jumping. It's an empty city, but it's beautiful. By the way, if the noise or the sounds of this FPS controller bother you, you can always select it and then look for the audio source and disable it. And now it'll work just fine, only without sounds. I'm still able to move through everything, only without sounds. Great. So it's a great way of exploring the city in a way that, before I actually build to the quest. The other thing that I recommend is looking at the city from above, from the Y, and also clicking on that little square, which disables the perspective and gives me that, architect, blueprint kind of look. I'm, zooming out. And I can see exactly where I am, and so on. I'm going to save. I'm going to look at this. And we just did step number 41. And if it worked, stop. We're going to go back, disable the FPS controller, and re-enable the OVR player controller. So this is being used, this is being enabled only for testing. So thank you, you did your job. Back to the OVR player controller and enable it. Which is, this one is for the quest. Save and save project. Now we're going to start creating our treasures. Because remember, the whole premise of the game is that, the city is under a dark spell and we have to look for like those gems, those treasures all throughout the city. And if we find all of them, we have lifted the spell. We're going to create an empty game object, and we're going to call it treasures. It's going to be a container for all of them. Empty game object, treasures, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm resetting transform. Yep. Reset transform. And as a child, we're going to create another empty game object, which we're going to call single treasure. I think you're guessing we're going to build one, make it perfect, turn it into a prefab so we can use more than one. Treasures, right click, another empty game object, single treasure. And I believe this one will have a slightly different transform. The the single treasure will be all zeros and negative half a meter. In other words, closer to me by half a meter. So negative 0.5. Now, once we start placing all those treasures throughout the city, see where this is. If my camera is here, then my treasure is kind of right in front of me, so I can see it. Once we start placing them all throughout the city, they will be, their X, Y, and Z will change, for each one of them, because we'll hide them. We also need to be able to touch it, so it needs to have a collider. I chose to give it a sphere collider, like a spherical, energy field around it. I'm just making sure that I didn't forget anything. No, I didn't. So, Mr. Single Treasure, you are getting a sphere collider. It's still invisible, doesn't have any. And the sphere collider will have no physics material. It will have 0, 1, and 0. It'll be 1 meter above ground. And it will have a radius of 1. So if I enable editing, you'll be able to see that it's basically like a sphere, like an invisible sphere, that inside I'm going to place my treasure. And if I touch the sphere, if I collide with that sphere, I caught the treasure. I found the treasure. I'm going to give a single treasure a rigid body. Default settings, other than uncheck use gravity. So Mr. Single Treasure, you're going to get a rigid body, so it can detect collision. All default settings other than use gravity. I don't want it to fall through the floor. And inside Single Treasure, there's going to be some children. One of them is going to be called Gem. It's an empty game object, but it's not going to stay empty for long. Reset default transform other than position Y 1.5. It's going to be 1.5 meters above ground. So empty game object. It's like a grandchild of treasures and a child of single treasure, and it's going to be called Gem. And I'm going to reset its transform, except Y, which is going to be 1.5. So if I look at it from the side, you can see that it's a little above ground. Then I need the actual gem. So in the city assets, inside a folder called Sets Gems, I'm going to find a folder called Prefabs. Inside of that, a folder called Gems Red. And inside of that, Gem 8. Gem 08. Now, why not just look for Gem 08 is because that name is being used a lot of times. So, and then I'm going to drag it into Gem as a child. In other words, a great-grandchild. Reset transform. So, here is the teacher's asset. Here's Set Gems. Here's Prefabs. Here's Gems Red. And here's Gem 08. And I'm going to drag it to be a child of Gem. So Gem 08, child of Gem. Single treasure, child of treasures. So Gem 08, I'm going to give it reset transform. And here it is. Actually, on the OVR player controller, I think I should have moved it a few meters back because it looks like I should be seeing it right now. Let me go back for a second to the OVR player controller. I might have skipped that. Yeah, I've skipped the fact that it needs to be 3 meters back. That's why I don't see the gem. So the OVR player controller needs to be -3, and then, yeah, then I can see the gem right in front of me. And it already has a very nice, they gave it, it's their own, you can see that it doesn't look like a regular material, like, standard or lit or something. It's a special shader called FX Gem, and it works only in the built-in render pipe, which is one of the reasons we're using the built-in render pipe. Going back to, I think we left off right here, I'm just going to check that on step number 48 that the settings are, they should be already, but I'm just going to check them. You'll notice that they don't look like the settings of regular materials. It's a special, let's call it custom shader. So 1.3, 2 and 2, 1.3, 2 and 2, nice red color from shader 3000, good. So everything looks good. When I look around at this, you can see that it acts like a gem, where it's like very transparent and at the same time very shiny. You cannot get this look from a regular shader, and I like this very much. I will stop this tutorial at this point. We are on step 48, and we will add the next thing, which is like an effect around it, like a magic effect, step 49, on the next tutorial.